At the top tonight were the two former supervisors at the Corpus Christi Army Depot, or CCAD, have been suspended after being accused of falsifying records. And the revelations come during a federal hearing that happened earlier today, and the details are tonight's top story. The two men, both from Robstown, 57-year-old Albert Flores and 54-year-old Samuel Escareno, are accused of altering records on repair work done at that helicopter repair facility, specifically instructing employees to make false entries to make it look like some Black Hawk helicopter blades met military specifications when in fact they did not and should not have been used. A federal grand jury has indicted Flores and Escareno on charges of conspiracy and falsifying records. If convicted, both could face up to 10 years in federal prison and a fine of up to $250,000.